Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Here Daily, with most of the crop mature and great weather, Iowa farmers have been hard at work. We check out harvest progress with ISU Extension agronomist Virgil Schmitt, as well as get a season overview. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining me on Farm Here Daily, we're going to take a look at southeastern Iowa harvest progress and season overviews with Virgil Schmitt, ISU Extension agronomist for the southeastern corner of the state. Virgil, thanks so much for joining us again on Farm Here Daily. Always good to talk to you. And tell me, how is harvest progress? We're going to be getting our crop progress report out later today. What are some of your expectations, and what have you seen?
Well, I think first of all, we're off to a really good start. We've had a couple of weeks of harvesting corn, a little bit more in my southern counties than in my northern counties. And then about 12 days or so ago, a lot of people switched from corn into soybeans, and so the combines are running really hard in those soybean fields right now.
Stock health has been an issue so far this year with some folks. Have you seen that in your area, and have farmers managed to get to a lot of those stands before there's any concern later on in the season?
I think so. I know we have some fields that have very poor stock quality, but most people so far have been able to get through those pretty well. I do know of one that was late planted for some stand issues and so forth, and that one had a lot of stock lodging, basically because of a windstorm that came through and caught it at just the wrong time. And so that's the only field that I really know of that's really in bad shape.
Have you been seeing any sign of diseased ears? I know that hasn't been as much of a topic as soybean rust, but I've heard it is a little bit more prevalent this year.
Yeah, it is in some areas. Over here, I have not run into any yet, so we're pretty fortunate over here.
That's fantastic. Now, I know there's a little bit of reprieve for the agronomists because farmers are out and about and very busy during harvest. But if folks are giving you a call, what are some of the questions you're getting right now?
Right now, the focus seems to be on pasture weed management. This is a time when if you're going after some of those perennials, you kind of like to get them sprayed somewhere between mid-September and mid-October in general. And of course, we're right in the middle of that. And so that's really kind of been the focus at this point.
I'm glad you brought that up because I heard in the northern part of the state there have been some concerns about armyworm in some of the small grains. Is it the same in the southeast?
We have run into very little of that. We've had some armyworms in a couple of alfalfa fields, but in general, nothing has really come to my attention that's major.
So as you are looking at it from an agronomy standpoint, let's take an overview of this season. And what are your impressions now that we've made it to harvest, now that we're seeing some yields start to come in? What's some of your impressions and some of maybe surprises that you've had?
Well, I think, first of all, we started off the season very good. We went clear through July, and a lot of people have said, I have never seen a crop that looks any better than this. And then August hit. In some areas, we're really lacking in rain. We had the high temperatures. I haven't really checked the data here, but a friend of mine in Champaign, Illinois, said that in August that he had 14 nights when they set the record high low temperature. And that is particularly devastating to corn because the corn gets rushed along, so it has fewer days to fill kernels. And the hotter it is, the more energy it uses just to survive. And so we had fewer days and less energy going in during those days. And so I'm kind of expecting that kernel size is going to be a little bit smaller than it would have been. Now, having said that, I'm still hearing some really, really good yields. And so it kind of makes you wonder what if we would have had a little bit more conducive August. We had a lot of southern rust that came in here late. A lot of people are talking about that. And of course, that's one of the reasons for some of the stock quality issues that you mentioned here. But in general, the southern rust came in after most of the corn was well dented. And at that point, it's really not going to affect yield any. It's going to make the fields look really, really ugly. And I do know a few fields that got hit really hard a little bit earlier on that did die very prematurely because of that. But in general, I think most of us kind of dodged the bullet on that. I'm hearing yields. Some people are really disappointed. They're only getting 230 bushels or something like that, and which tells you how high the expectations were. I talked to one fellow last week down in Lee County, and he said that the lowest yielding field that he had for corn was 275, and it went on up to 325. And so and that was in southern Iowa, southeast Iowa, about as far as you can get. And so that's where it had been about as warm as any place in the state of Iowa. So there are some very good yields out there, even though that we've had some kind of challenging times here. But again, there's an awful lot of variability out there too. And I think that's the other thing. People are seeing a lot of variability just from one hybrid to another in the field, maybe depending upon when they caught what kind of weather and so forth here. So there's a lot of variability out there.
You mentioned
on the soybean. Okay.
Oh, go ahead. I'd like to go to soybeans in just a moment, but you mentioned the corn being lighter filled this year potentially in some fields, and I was hearing it described as kind of like baby teeth for kids, where it's wiggly in that way. Is that the type that you're describing there?
Well, no, the kernels, what I'm describing are smaller. They have good test weight because you can get more kernels in that little bucket. But test weights have not been an issue. But the kernels are a little bit smaller than they would have been. But on the other hand, when you're hearing some of those really high yields, you know that there are a lot of them out there, and they can't be too small. The wiggly kernels comes from a situation where the grain dries out essentially faster than the cob does. And that's a real challenge for some people that are harvesting now because the kernels aren't coming off of the cob quite as well as they should be if the cobs were drier. And so that basically means that people have got to really be looking, and this is even going to be a difference from one hybrid to another in the field, looking behind the combine and trying to hit that sweet spot where you are, getting almost all the corn off of the cob, but you're not damaging what's going into the tank there. And there's really no science to it. It's just a lot of by guess and by golly.
Let's move back over to soybeans. I interrupted you there. What's your overview then of the bean fields?
I think also yields that I'm hearing are very good. There are some fields that had a lot of sudden death, for instance, there, and those pockets didn't yield very much. But if you kind of get out of those areas there, I'm hearing some very good yields, 60s, 70s, and occasional 80 out there. So again, I think people are really pretty happy. The soybeans weren't affected as much on a negative side as the corn in terms of the heat, but in areas where we didn't get much rainfall in August, and that's a lot of the area, that also is dragging yields down, because there's an old saying that soybean yields are made in August. There's a lot more to it than that, but August is a very, very important month for soybeans. And, with the heat and lack of rainfall, that was not really the best environment for them.
That's really interesting, because I would have thought with all the rain earlier in the year and the refilling of the aquifers with that big old taproot, soybeans would have fared a bit better with all that ambient moisture left over.
Yeah, in general, they, like I said, they sustained that heat and the dryness better than corn did when it comes right down to it, and particularly the heat here. But there's an old saying that soybeans don't like wet feet, and so they tend to not like, necessarily go down all that deep in some areas there. But again, they don't seem to have been affected really very much here. I think a lot of people really were more concerned the wet weather that we had in July would continue into August, and we'd have a lot of root rots out there, and that simply didn't happen. And I think that's been one of the good things.
Virgil Schmitt is the ISU Extension agronomist for southeastern Iowa. Virgil, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily, and good luck to you and your farmers over in southeastern Iowa for the rest of the season.
Oh, thank you. It's always a joy to be with you.
This is Farm Here Daily. We will have an update on some of that harvest progress in just a moment, but first we'll take a look at the marketplace. And there was some red at the close for the grains on Monday. December corn, half a penny weaker, 421.5, with March falling a quarter cent at 438.5. Soybeans in November, 3 1/4 down at 10.10.5, with January falling 3 1/4 at 10.29 3/4. Soybean meal in October, 70 cents a ton in the red, $268.10. Soybean oil in October, half a penny weaker, 49.11 a pound. December wheat, a quarter penny down, 5.19.5, with March falling half a cent, 5.37 3/4. Hard red winter wheat in December, 2 3/4 more, 5.08 1/4, with March 2 3/4 up as well, 5.29 even. In the livestock market close for Monday, there was some red there as well. October live cattle down 47 cents a hundredweight, $231.32. December 47 cents down as well, $233.82. Feeder cattle in October 80 cents a hundredweight lower at $356.20, with November down 60 cents at $353.87. Lean hogs in October, 35 cents a hundredweight down, $101.15. December lean hogs 70 cents a hundredweight weaker at $90.35 a hundredweight. That is the Monday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. And after having that conversation earlier today with Virgil Schmitt, we did end up seeing the crop progress report out from the National Agricultural Statistics Service, and Iowa farmers are definitely hard at work with about 6.2 days that were good for field work over the past week, the USDA says. It says warm temperatures also quickly advanced crop maturity, and field work was corn and soybeans harvest has begun. Nearly all of the corn was dented or beyond, it says, with 80% matured. It's about 4 days ahead of last year and a day ahead of the average. The corn for grain harvest is now 15% done, 4 days ahead of last year and 3 days ahead of the average. Moisture content of that corn, about 20%. Corn conditions are at 1% very poor, 5% poor, and then 53% good, 18% excellent. Soybean coloring is nearly done, 95%, with 83% of beans dropping leaves. That is 3 days ahead of last year, 2 days ahead of the average. Soybean harvest was at 17% complete. That's 3 days behind last year and the average. Soybean conditions are rated 77% fair to good, 18% is in the excellent category. Pasture conditions are rated 53% good or excellent. And taking a look at the subsoil, topsoil moisture ratings as well. 5% of topsoil moisture conditions rated very short, with 22% at short. 8% is still in the surplus category, though, across the state of Iowa. Subsoil moisture conditions are 23% short to very short, with 7% in the surplus category. This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community, so please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. Again, I'm your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.